My coworker stole my startup. I thought he was a friend, and he walked away with my idea. I disappeared. I listened to him make it up as he went along. And then I came back with lawyers and proof and a plan. Now he's a pariah, and I'm the CEO of my own company. I've always believed that loyalty is everything. In the world of tech startups, where everyone's out for themselves, you learn to keep your circle tight. But even in that world, there are still people you trust. At least, I thought there were. My name's Lauren. I'm a software engineer at a mid-sized IT company. Nothing glamorous, but I loved my job. The late-night coding sessions, the adrenaline rush of solving problems no one else could, the satisfaction of building something from scratch. But I wanted more. I always wanted more. I'd spent years working on ideas, tinkering with projects, building little apps and features in my spare time. I had a vision. It wasn't just a side hustle. This was my dream. I wanted to launch my own startup, create something revolutionary, something that would disrupt the way businesses handled customer data. Think AI-driven solutions that could predict customer behavior, automate responses, and reduce human error. It was a huge market, and I had a plan. I had the technology, the knowledge, and the drive. But most importantly, I had Adam. Adam Hayes. He was my colleague, yes, but also my closest friend in the company. We'd been through a lot together, countless late-night coding sprints, project deadlines that felt impossible, and team meetings that always ended with more work than when we started. I knew him better than anyone. He was ambitious, sharp, and always knew how to play the game. He had that charisma, that ability to convince people to believe in him, and I admired him for it. It was one night at the office, after a particularly grueling week, when I first told him about the startup. We were sitting in a small corner of the open plan office, sipping lukewarm coffee, taking a break from the usual madness. "I've been thinking about this for a while," I said, my voice low. "I want to start something on my own, something big. I've got this idea. It's for customer data management, but it's not like anything that's out there right now." Adam leaned back in his chair, his gaze intense. "I'm listening." I explained the concept, the vision behind it, the technology that could make it work. My pitch was rough, still in the early stages, but I could see the spark in his eyes. He was interested, more than interested. He was excited. "That's brilliant, Lauren," he said, leaning forward. "You've got something here, but this could be bigger than just a small startup. You need a team, you need funding, you need to scale, fast." I nodded, grateful for his enthusiasm. Adam had always been the kind of person who could see the bigger picture, and I respected him for that. I didn't have all the answers. Hell, I didn't even know where to start. But I trusted him. I trusted that he would guide me, help me build this thing into something real. That night, he gave me advice. It wasn't just the usual get an angel investor spiel. No, Adam went deeper. He talked about networking, about creating the right pitch, about how to handle the PR side of things, how to structure a business model that would attract real investors. It felt like I had found the perfect partner. I was in awe of how much he knew. "I'll help you," he said, his voice confident. "Let's make this happen. Together." I was over the moon. With Adam by my side, I felt unstoppable. I had everything I needed, the idea, the drive, and now the support of someone I trusted. Or so I thought. The days that followed were a blur of excitement and nervous energy. Adam and I started meeting after hours, brainstorming ways to refine the concept, improve the prototype. He helped me fine-tune the details, introduced me to people who could help with business planning, and even suggested ways to structure my pitch for investors. I began to feel like we were building something real, but there was always something in the back of my mind that made me uneasy. A nagging feeling that I couldn't shake. I didn't know what it was. Maybe it was the way Adam would sometimes act a little too interested when I shared a breakthrough idea, or the way he'd suggest I hold off on sharing certain details with others until we were ready. But I pushed those thoughts away. I trusted him. I had to. And then, one morning, it happened. I logged into LinkedIn, half awake, still groggy from another late-night coding session. I saw the notification from Adam, He'd posted something. I clicked on it without thinking. Adam Hayes, CEO of CloudBridge, announces launch of groundbreaking customer data management platform utilizing cutting-edge AI. The world around me seemed to freeze. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering in my chest. The words blurred together. I scrolled down, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. CloudBridge, AI-powered data management? It was my idea, word for word, feature for feature. The logo, the branding, the name, it was all too familiar. I went cold. My stomach dropped to my knees. I had no idea how long I sat there staring at the screen, unable to move. My mind was racing. No way, this couldn't be happening. But it was. Adam had done it. He'd stolen my idea. He'd taken everything we'd discussed, everything I'd trusted him with, and he'd turned it into his own product, his own company. He'd entered the market first, with the exact vision I had. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone, shout at him, demand answers. But I couldn't. I was paralyzed, betrayed. I had been played. In that moment, something inside me changed. The pain was still there, but it was quickly turning into something else, something colder, something dangerous. I wasn't just going to sit back and let him take everything from me. I would fight back. And when I did, I would make sure he regretted ever crossing me. For a week, I did nothing. Absolutely nothing. I couldn't bring myself to confront Adam, or anyone for that matter. My brain was still in shock, trying to process the betrayal. How could he? How could he have done this to me? I had trusted him. He had been my confidant, my partner in all of this. I had shared everything with him, believing we were building something together. But now, my trust felt like a joke. I stayed at home for the first few days, avoiding the office, avoiding people. I couldn't bear to face Adam or anyone else from work. I just needed to think. The emptiness inside me was consuming, like a dark hole pulling everything in. My idea was no longer mine. The future I had planned for myself was slipping away. But as the days passed, something started to shift in me. The anger, the shock, the helplessness, they all began to morph into something sharper, something focused. I couldn't let him get away with this. I wasn't going to be one of those women who just sat back and let the world walk all over her. No, I was going to fight, and I was going to win. I knew I had to move fast. Adam had launched CloudBridge already, and it was getting buzz. Investors were lining up, the media was covering it, and I was nowhere to be seen. If I wanted to take back what was mine, I couldn't waste any more time licking my wounds. I needed a plan. So, I went back to the office. It was a strange feeling, walking into the building again after everything that had happened. The familiar hum of the fluorescent lights, the low murmur of conversations, the sound of keyboards clicking. It felt surreal. I didn't even know if Adam was there. I assumed he was, probably holding meetings with potential clients, acting like he had always been the genius behind the idea. But I didn't care. What mattered now was what I was going to do. I spent the next few days in the office, working on my own projects, things that were unrelated to the startup idea. I needed a cover, something that would keep me under the radar while I quietly gathered information. Every moment in the office was a reminder of how close I had been to everything. I had been so naive. I spent my lunch breaks digging into CloudBridge, reading every article I could find, studying their marketing materials, their product features. It was all so eerily similar to the pitch I had given Adam, but with just enough tweaks to make it look like his own. I could feel the rage bubbling up again, but I forced myself to keep calm. I was playing the long game now. By day 4, I'd gathered everything I needed. I had the proof I was looking for. Adam's public presentation had enough of my original ideas in it to make the case clear. But that wasn't enough. I needed leverage. I reached out to a friend of mine, Sophie, who worked in intellectual property law. Sophie had always been more than just a friend. She was also the best lawyer I knew, and she owed me a favor from years ago when I'd helped her with some coding issues for a project of hers. I need you to look into something for me, I said when she picked up the phone. It's personal, and it's serious. She listened patiently as I explained everything. She didn't interrupt, just let me get it all out, which was exactly what I needed. After I finished, she was silent for a moment. Lauren, this is bad, but it's not hopeless, Sophie finally said. You're talking about intellectual property theft. If you can prove that Adam stole your idea, you've got a case. You can take him to court and win. My heart skipped a beat. I had known, in the back of my mind, that there was a legal path forward, but hearing it from Sophie made it feel real. The thought of a legal battle against someone I had once trusted made me feel sick to my stomach, but at least I knew now that I wasn't powerless. Thank you, I said, relief flooding me. I'll send you everything I've gathered. Over the next few days, I continued to lay the groundwork. Sophie's team dug through the legal details of Cloudbridge's intellectual property filings, and I began to work on my next move, getting in touch with the investors who had backed Adam's project. But as the legal wheels started turning, something else was simmering in the background, something I hadn't planned for. It wasn't just the legal battle that worried me, it was the fact that my idea wasn't mine anymore. Adam had taken it, and there was a part of me that knew I could never reclaim it entirely. The market was already starting to recognize his platform as the next big thing. In the tech world, timing was everything. I had missed my chance. Or had I? I started working on my own version of the product again, a quieter, more refined version, something that could stand out in the market, but this time, I wouldn't let anyone know about it until I was ready. If I was going to make this work, it had to be bigger and better than what Adam had created. I couldn't just mimic him. I needed to surpass him. But I was still missing one key ingredient: the exposure. The world needed to know that Adam hadn't come up with the idea on his own. He needed to be exposed for the thief he was, and I was the one who would make sure it happened. But first, I had to wait for the right moment. In the meantime, I kept my head down at work, acting like everything was fine. I kept watching Adam's every move, reading the media's glowing coverage of him, fighting the urge to scream every time his name came up. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. I would make sure he paid for this. The days after my conversation with Sophie felt like a blur. I had been doing nothing but work, no sleep, no breaks, and it had started to take a toll on me. The constant pressure of living a double life, pretending everything was fine at the office while secretly building my case against Adam, was wearing me thin. Every time I saw him, all I could think about was how he had stolen my future, how he was out there, getting richer and more powerful, all because of a lie. But I was no longer going to sit back and let that happen. I had a plan now, and it was working. Sophie's team had dug deeper into Adam's company, and what they had found was damning. The intellectual property filings for Cloudbridge weren't as clean as they seemed. There were discrepancies, minor but crucial mistakes in their filings, things that didn't add up. The more I learned, the clearer it became. Adam had not only stolen my idea, but he had also been careless with his own paperwork. And that carelessness was my golden ticket. But I had to be careful. I couldn't just launch an all-out attack without preparing the ground first. I knew that if I did, Adam and his team would fight back hard. And I wasn't ready for that kind of battle just yet. But I was close. It was time for my first move. One morning, as I sat at my desk, I noticed Adam walking toward me in the hallway. My stomach twisted. I had been avoiding him, pretending I was too busy to talk, but he was getting more persistent. I could feel the tension in the air, and I knew that this moment couldn't be avoided forever. "Lauren," he called out, his voice dripping with false cheer. "Can we talk?" I forced a smile, doing my best to look unaffected. "Sure, Adam. What's up?" He came over and leaned against the edge of my desk, giving me one of those smiles. Calm, confident, the kind that made my skin crawl now. "I've been thinking about what happened with Cloudbridge. I mean, I know things have been a little tense between us lately, but I think we should bury the hatchet, don't you? The audacity, the sheer nerve." He was standing there, acting like we were old friends, like he hadn't just taken everything I'd worked for. I felt the old fury welling up inside me, but I kept my voice steady. Yeah, sure. I think burying the hatchet sounds like a good idea. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to steal my idea. His face stiffened, and for a moment I saw a flash of panic in his eyes, but he quickly masked it with that same fake smile. Look, Lauren, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not how it happened. We've been through this already. I forced a laugh, leaning back in my chair. Really? Because the way I see it, I came up with the idea. I pitched it to you, and now you're the one making all the money from it, while I'm sitting here like an idiot. But you're right. Let's bury the hatchet. Let's pretend everything's fine. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off before he could say anything else. You know, Adam, I've always respected you, but now, I realize that you're not the person I thought you were. You're a thief, and the worst part is, I let you get away with it. I stood up, my voice growing firmer, colder. I could feel the anger tightening in my chest, but I wasn't going to let it control me. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to be strategic. Just know this, Adam. I'm not done yet. You haven't won. Not by a long shot. I walked away, leaving him standing there, speechless, his jaw clenched. That encounter felt like a small victory, but I couldn't afford to get complacent. I needed to be careful, calculated. The first part of my revenge had been set into motion, but now it was time to make sure it worked. The next day, I made my move. Sophie had told me that there was a loophole in the intellectual property laws that could give me leverage. The details of Cloudbridge's patent filings had been altered after they had been submitted, which was highly irregular. It wasn't enough to take Adam to court yet, but it was enough to cause him some serious problems. I contacted a few trusted journalists from the tech industry, people I knew from my previous work, whose names carried weight. I wasn't trying to go for a public smear campaign just yet, but I needed the right eyes on this situation. I fed them just enough to get them interested, a few hints about the discrepancies in Adam's filings, and the idea that there was more to Cloudbridge's success than met the eye. I didn't give them everything, though. I wanted them to investigate further, to dig deeper. And I knew they would. Journalists loved a good story, especially when it involved big names in the tech world. Adam wouldn't be able to hide behind his charm and fake smile forever. But while the journalists started looking into it, I focused on the next part of my plan, getting in touch with Adam's investors. I had known for a while that the biggest investors in Cloudbridge were all high-profile names in Silicon Valley. They had backed him because they believed in the idea, not knowing the dirty truth behind it. But if I could expose the lies and show them the truth, they would turn on Adam faster than he could blink. It wasn't easy. I didn't have direct access to them, but I knew people who did. A few cold calls later, and I had arranged a discreet meeting with one of the key investors. It was risky, but it was the next step in taking Adam down. The tension was unbearable. I had been preparing for this moment for months, carefully setting up each piece of the puzzle. But now, as I sat in the dimly lit coffee shop, waiting for the investor to arrive, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to come crashing down. I could already hear Adam's smug voice in my head, taunting me, reminding me that I would never win. But I wasn't going to let that happen, not after everything I had sacrificed. The investor arrived on time, David Wilson, one of Cloudbridge's largest backers. He was a quiet man, a veteran in the tech industry, but his reputation was legendary. His word meant everything to the startup world. If I could get him on my side, Adam's carefully constructed empire would crumble. I greeted him with a smile, offering him a seat at the small table. We exchanged pleasantries, but my mind was already racing. I couldn't waste any time with niceties. David, I began, my voice calm but firm. I know you've invested a lot in Cloudbridge, and I know that you trust Adam. But I need you to listen to me. I have proof. Proof that Adam didn't create Cloudbridge. I did. David's eyes flickered with curiosity, but he didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned forward, studying me closely. Proof? he asked cautiously. I nodded. I can prove it. The IP filings, the source code, it all came from my work. I was the one who pitched the idea, and he stole it. It's all there, and if you want to see it, I can show you. His gaze softened slightly, but I could tell he was skeptical. Why would he do that? Adam's always been straightforward with me. I don't see him doing something like this. I leaned in, lowering my voice. That's exactly why I'm here, David. You're not seeing the bigger picture. Adam is a master at hiding his tracks. But there's more. Sophie's team uncovered discrepancies in his legal filings. If you don't take action now, you might lose everything. David paused, clearly weighing his options. I could see the doubt creeping into his mind, the wheels turning. I had to seal the deal. I've also contacted some journalists, I continued, pulling out my phone. They're investigating the case as we speak. Once this hits the press, it'll be all over for him. And I'm sure you don't want your name tied to a scandal like that. David didn't speak for a long moment. Then, finally, he exhaled, sitting back in his chair. All right, Lauren. I'll take a look at the information you have. But I need to be sure, really sure, before I do anything. I nodded, my heart racing. I understand. I'll send you everything, every piece of evidence. You'll see for yourself. As I left the meeting, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The first big step in my plan had gone exactly how I hoped. But it wasn't over yet. I still had to deal with Adam. As the days passed, I could feel the walls closing in on him. The journalists had picked up the story, and the pressure on Adam was mounting. His legal team was working overtime, trying to stop the investigation. But they were making mistakes, huge mistakes. They filed injunctions, tried to discredit me publicly, but all it did was make people more curious. And that curiosity led them straight to the truth. Sophie kept me updated on the progress. Every time I spoke to her, there was a new development. Adam's team was unraveling faster than I had expected. They were scrambling to cover their tracks, but it was too late. The cracks were already showing. And then it happened. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing the latest emails when I saw it. An official statement from David Wilson, sent to a handful of major media outlets. It was short, but it was enough. David had pulled his investment from Cloudbridge, citing grave concerns regarding the company's intellectual property and business practices. The floodgates opened. Within hours, more investors followed suit. The stock price of Cloudbridge plummeted. Adam's carefully crafted public image began to collapse as more details emerged about the questionable practices within the company. The press had a field day, publishing articles and interviews from disgruntled employees, former investors, and clients who felt betrayed. Adam's lies had caught up with him, and he couldn't escape. I had to admit, it was beautiful to watch. But the best part was yet to come. It was 2 weeks later when I got the call. It was from David, and I could hear the tension in his voice. Lauren, he said, his tone more serious than I had ever heard it. We've decided to go public with everything. The evidence you provided was more than enough. We've compiled a report, and we're going to expose Cloudbridge for what it really is. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The board has agreed, David continued. The press release is already drafted. Tomorrow, we'll make the announcement. I could barely contain my excitement. Thank you, David. You don't know what this means. He chuckled, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was more of a tired, resigned sound. I'm just glad I didn't have to lose more money on this mess. The next morning, the press release went live. The headlines hit everywhere. Cloudbridge founder under investigation for intellectual property theft. Major investors pull support. The story exploded across social media, news outlets, and tech blogs. Adam's name was mud, and there was no turning back. I watched as Adam's world began to unravel. Investors pulled out, clients canceled contracts, and his reputation, carefully constructed over years, was destroyed in a matter of days. People who had once admired him now looked at him with disdain. And the best part? Adam had no idea who had been behind it all. I did it. But what would you do? Revenge is a dangerous game. It feels sweet in the moment, like victory after a long battle. But let's be honest, there's a price to pay. For months, I was consumed by the need to make Adam pay for what he did. Every move I made was calculated, every detail meticulously planned. I had to think like him, to see the world the way he did, and it worked. But what if I hadn't been so obsessed? What if I had let it go and just focused on my own success instead of tearing down his? I could have spent that time building something even bigger, faster, and more impactful. Would I have ended up in a better place? You know, there's a part of me that wonders if I've just become like him, just as ruthless, just as determined to win at all costs. There's a difference between playing the game and letting the game play you, and sometimes I wonder if I've crossed that line. But at the end of the day, what would you do if you were in my shoes? If someone took everything from you, stole your dreams, and left you with nothing but the ashes of your own ambitions? Would you fight back? Would you let it go? Or would you burn it all down to reclaim what's yours? I've made my choice, but I want to hear from you. What would you do?